Welcome. I'm Jeff Slide Nelson, Gary Nelson's son. If you'll give me just a minute, I got a couple of things I gotta get to go on with this. Just a second. So I'd like everyone, let's give Gary a moment of silence and meditate about what we're about to do here, because it's with utmost sincerity and love for our fellow man that we honor Gary Nelson. Well, it's a time-honored tradition to implement someone's final wishes. And this is true even for those that are about to be executed. They get to choose what meal they're going to have, what's going to happen to them in their funeral arrangements. And so today we're doing the same for Gary Nelson, whose wish was for this to be a very positive and celebratory time. So, I want to recognize everyone for coming here today. This is a difficult day for memorial service. It's right before Easter. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to honor Gary. I also want to recognize some people who couldn't be here today. Harry, now you were on my list, but you're here now, so I got to take you off that one. Skip, Patricia, Lourdes, Tom, and others who live in other parts of the world that would have liked to have been here, but it's just not practical. So let's talk about somewhat of an uncomfortable subject, death. Well, I've lost some fathers and I've lost some brothers, but I still have my sister and I still have my mother. The truth is that all of us are going to die. And it could be me or you next week. We really don't know. So here we are. So what do we say? Well, we say things like, he gave up the ghost, he passed away, or my favorite, he transitioned, or he died. Today, more than any other time in history, mankind is consumed with lives that have us in a constant rush to earn and consume while searching for shallow instant gratification. Death is possibly the only inevitable event in life. Everyone and everything that lives will eventually die. However, most of us refuse to allow our thoughts to contemplate for too long our own mortality. Death is inevitable, and thinking about it should be too. Being caught up in the rat race and living life at full speed leaves little room for introspection, philosophical debates, or researching the meaning of our existence. Then, now more than ever, we hear mature people say, with regret, that life has rushed by them in a heartbeat. A good story takes you back and forth between now and then. This is the earliest picture that I have of Dad. He was 3, and it was his identification document coming into the United States from Germany. And this is the last picture. He had just passed. Well, I believe that Gary Nelson did a decent job of living his life as an adventurer in pursuit of truth and desiring a better world. He believed that instead of chasing meaningless titles or material things, it was better to travel and learn about history and culture and help with the betterment of others. He did this through music with the Frozen Capella, singing with the Frozen Singing Society, the Barbershoppers in Korgemeinschaft, and serving on the German Day Council, and with humor. A lot of us have experiences that we never share with anyone. They're just for us in our life. My father shared some of his experiences with me, and I believe they're worth sharing with you. There will be many I won't share, but that's another story. Hopefully you'll find it worth your time today. Dad was an investigator and a researcher. He was looking for the facts, looking for the truth. He was always the observer. Now, I'm not going to belabor you with a lot of his information and his history that's right over here in his obituary, which, by the way, he mostly wrote. But there are many people who don't know some things about Dad. The basics, of course, were that he was born in Hamburg, Germany on Christmas Day in 1929 and grew up in Chicago, where he attended Lutheran parochial schools where many students were of German ancestry. At a very early age, while in first grade, of course, you have to know he started first grade when he was 4, he learned electrical work, or about wiring, working with workers who were doing construction close to where he grew up. He was a bit of a prodigy. He graduated from high school at age 16 and went to work at Commonwealth at Edison, which was an electric and gas company in Chicago. At that time, they had a direct current monopoly in Chicago. Now, of course, it's all alternating current. Well, he had some health issues in his sinuses at that time that caused him to miss work almost weekly, and nothing the doctors did provided any relief, and they had to remove his adenoids and his tonsils. So at the suggestion of a friend, he went to see a naturopath. They're similar but different to chiropractors, and mainly you'll find them in Illinois. And he performed some manipulations on his skull and sinuses, and after a couple of visits, he never missed another day from work from that event. So this is what caused Dad to pursue and obtain a degree from the College of Naturopathic Medicine in Chicago. I gotta get some water. Can you tell I'm nervous? So Gary was 19 years old when he was informed by his maternal grandparents that his father was very much alive in Germany, and that the story he had been told by his mother that his father had died when he was 3 months old was not true. It would be some time later before he could get back to Germany to look for his father. So when it became obvious that he was probably going to be drafted for the Korean conflict, he and his best friend both joined the Illinois Air Guard, and they were stationed in Selfridge Air Force Base in Michigan. Like most enlisted men, they were subjected to KP duty, kitchen patrol, which they found most distasteful. At the time, Dad was studying a Hawaiian belief system called Huna, and he and his friend implemented its use to get out of KP duty. Now you can look that up on Google. And to their amazement, it worked. And so Dad had another idea, that it would be best to make it happen for all the servicemen on the base. And that's exactly what happened. It was announced that an experimental program was implemented only on that base where no KP duty was required. Dad sought out and found alternative points of view that were considered esoteric, and in 1951, while on leave, Dad traveled to Amherst Junction, Wisconsin to meet several other truth seekers he had befriended. Richard Shaver, which was the editor and writer of Shaver Mysteries, Max Guler, Bill Lawton, and Ray Palmer, who was an editor and writer of Fate magazine. These individuals were well known at the time and shared Dad's desire to seek truth and question all. You can't really see this well, can you? That's better. Okay, so Dad met my mom, Blossom, and they were married in Chicago. And her father, my granddad, lived in Texas. And my dad and mom were convinced to move to Irving, Texas, where I was born. Unfortunately, once here, it was discovered that naprapathy was no longer allowed to be practiced in Texas. And so my dad couldn't set up his practice and instead sold insurance. I happened to have his insurance license from that time. For a short while, Dad drove a taxi cab. So he always knew the back streets of how to get somewhere in Dallas. And that happens to be his Island Park taxi cab license. Amazing that he had maintained all of these documents all these years. He also worked for several different businesses. Some of them are listed in his obituary. And in the late 70s, he was concerned about air quality and also health. And he formed a company called Energy, which sold negative ion generators, which were probably more successful in Mexico and Europe than in the US. And I still have one. So when his career at computer language research, FastTex, what they were known as, was over, the company was bought out and his department was shut down. So he started another career working for the Department of Homeland Security as a screener at TSA at DFW. And he finally retired at age 79. Dad was computer savvy. He sent emails out every day until about the last 2 weeks of his life. He couldn't. So Dad loved to travel. He had a case of wanderlust, a strong desire or urge to wander or travel and explore the world. How many of you present here today went on a trip to Germany or somewhere else with Gary Nelson? Well, there you go. His first trip to Germany was actually in 1965, and Hazel went with him, his wife. And unfortunately, his father had already passed away when he looked for him. Dad's analysis of the situation was that the circumstances and the beliefs at that time were such that he understood why his mother had deceived him. He just would have preferred to have gotten to meet his dad. Many years later, he did locate his father's second wife, who had 2 children from her previous marriage. But my opa, his dad, never had any other children, just Carrie. So once it could be arranged, Dad planned a trip to see his stepmother. However, she passed away just weeks before he got there. And he went ahead and went anyhow, and he became friends with his stepmother's only surviving child, which would be my dad's stepsister, and of course her daughter, and I'm in touch with them. So the Frozen Capella and the Quarter Mine Chef went on trips to Germany and surrounding areas with Dad, and they had a lot of fun. In turn, these bands and groups were hosted here on their visits. And one of the most memorable things was a trip in 1996 when we were in Gumbelskirchen, Austria. The singing groups there were well aware of Dad's humor, and he had always arranged some fantastic experiences when they visited here. So they had a plan to do something that he would never imagine. So we were led up this large hill where the vineyards were. This is wine country. And Dad received a gift of a plot of land that was a vineyard. He also received a bottle of wine from the vintner. And And that was one of the only occasions where Dad was dumbfounded and had no words. I still have the deed to that vineyard, but it's not transferable upon his death. We were fortunate to take what we all knew would be Dad's last trip to Germany in 2012, where we were able to distribute Hazel's ashes in her favorite place, and Dad could see old friends for a last time. The trip was really hard on him physically, but he had a fantastic time with his friends. After that, I asked Dad to come over every Sunday, and we all would spend, the afternoon watching a movie or two, and I'm grateful that we had that time together. In 2013, Dad insisted that he and I go to Mexico City on a trip and visit some friends. So we planned the trip together, and unfortunately, after the plane tickets and the hotel were all arranged, his health declined, and he realized he would be unable to make the trip. And he insisted that I go anyway, and I did. I went without him. It was definitely one of the more challenging things to do, but it's one trip I will never forget. When I returned, we discussed and discussed and discussed it. So, at this time, I'd like to have the Frozen Singing Society sing a couple of songs for us. Abendrühe by Mozart, and I have a hard time pronouncing this one, but it's Ein Schönstein Windgründe, I believe. So, y'all ready to come on? Whenever you're ready. He was born with the last name Roselius, and then it was Malind, and then, of course, Nelson, which was what we all know him from. In the beginning, Dad and I only had a little time together, 2 years. And my first real dad was Dr. Robert Sly, who died at age 41 when I was 13. And he was a good man. And the next was Pat Cowan, who, when I was older, he was a fatherly figure. And since I'd known him for so long, we were really good friends. So when my father and I connected, some 23 years, when I was 23 years old, that was 21 years we were separated, we could relate to each other's situation. And that relationship is what changed my life. And I could never go back to being the person I was prior to that. Those 35 years went fast. And I have my mother for helping me find my father. So Dad believed that he was a spirit entity who lived in his body, and that death was not the finish, just the end of an adventure. It was also his belief that the time to mourn is when you're born, that living in a body and having to go through life with all the trials and tribulations is the real burden. And when you no longer have your body, that's the time to celebrate, being free from such burdens. So here we are. Dr. Hank.
Well, Jeff, first let me say, I really appreciate that you've asked me to say a few words about your dad. Maybe this will help. Can y'all hear me a little better now? Yeah. So let me say it again. I want to thank Jeff for putting this together and for honoring me with saying a few words about Gary. Gary was not just a friend. Gary was an idol, a model, somebody that I've looked up to as long as I've known him. And there's a German saying that says, wo man singt, da lass dich nieder, böse Menschen kennen keine Lieder. So thank you all for giving testimony to that just a few minutes ago. Gary was not just a guy who liked to sing. He organized singing, he organized music, so that good people could come together. And look at this room today. These are the good people that Gary gathered around him, and I appreciate it very much. Now, Jeff made a few references about Gary's youth and sort of the difficult path that he had to take. I would like to take a step up from that. When Gary was born, the time in Germany was as bad as it could come. And he was actually lucky to make it out in time. Had he not, probably at age 13 or 14, he would have been drafted to the Volkssturm, and who knows whether he would have survived that. But he did. And then, what did he do? He ended up with the name Gary Nelson. Who would have thunk it? Gerhard Roselius, Heinrich Friedrich. I also have 3 given names. So, how much more German can it get? And yet, he had a name he could have just hidden in plain sight. It was not popular in 1945 and the years thereafter to confess being a German. What did he do? He embraced his German heritage, and again, we're all witnesses of that. We're all beneficiaries of that. And why do you do that? Well, it's just in us. Germans that we have certain things that we like to do. We like to sing, we like to play music, we like a good glass of beer, we like good hefty food. Does all of that describe Gary? It sure does. So Gary embraced that, and not only that, he organized it. And he made a mission of it to get all of us together and project into the society at large that, well, yes, there were really, really bad things that in the name of Germans were done during Gary's lifetime. And there's no taking back of that. But there's also hundreds of years of German cultural history. German people are not all just murderers. And so he tried to project that into the community with music, song, organizing, activities, festivities. And I had the privilege of doing some of that together with Gary. And let me tell you, working with Gary wasn't always easy. That guy was hard-headed, but so am I. And so we butted heads at the German Day Council, Texas German Day Council, I should say. But the result of that was always something where either I learned from Gary or I had to set him right, and so did others, and we arrived at something workable. But I can tell you one thing, that when Gary had an opinion, and those were always strong, he didn't just think it up. He came prepared. He always was prepared. If I had asked Gary for something, he would deliver. There are not many people with whom I've worked over my career in whatever activity that were as reliable as Gary was in delivering what they promised. That was Gary Nelson. And one of his wishes was, and I tried as good as I could to carry the torch for him, was to bring the German Pioneer Ball to its 50th time. And Gary, we did it. It was hard. We had, when this activity, the ball started, to try to put all Germans in the community together. We had an attendance of 1,500 or so. And it had gone down to, I think the last activity we did, to about 250. But we always had a good time. And Gary and Hazel worked their hearts out to do this. So you said a few words about life and death. And actually, just a couple of days ago, I had to put together a little quote for my daughter's father-in-law, who passed away in Switzerland. And I selected a quote from Goethe that I can't recite it verbatim, but essentially it says that I'm not afraid of death because my spirit will be there forever, just like the sun that seems to go away in the evening and comes up again in the morning. But in reality, it shines all the time. Gary's spirit shines all the time with us and forever. Thank you for listening.
Okay. So you brought it up, we're going to talk about it. Beer. Dad liked beer. And he introduced me to good beer. The last time that Dad could talk, he asked for a beer, and we had a beer together. Now, it was a non-alcoholic beer. He had quit from some time back having any alcoholic beverages, but Hazel said something to me once about Dad, that she had never seen him drunk, and neither had I. Now, I don't know if that means he had a great tolerance or if he just drank in moderation, but I know that's the truth. So this venue here does not allow alcohol without a lot of red tape. So if any of you want to have a toast to Gary Nelson at the next place at the clubhouse, that would be the place for that. So at this time, I'd like to invite Phil Faulkner to come and say a few words. Phil was a member of the Dallas Frozen Singing Society and the Frozen Capella with Dad from way back.
Thank you, Jeff. When I joined the Dallas Frozen in the spring of 1975, one of the first members to welcome me was Gary Nelson. And his greeting remained the same then as it was at the end. Big smile and a small joke. Our choir, along with other Texas choirs, under the umbrella of the Texas Quartermeinschaft, was heading to North Germany to be entertained and hosted in private homes by a similar choir consortium called Lead Hope. My wife did join them for several trips, but we did not make that first one. In early 1976, Gary, along with the Miner families of Austin, Texas, and Glickstadt, Germany, convinced my family of teenage girls to do a summer student exchange with the two horse boys from Hamburg. And that exchange worked out very well, and we continue to correspond with the horse family. One of Gary's and my first fundraiser for the benefit of the Frozen was a songbook production where Gary supplied the sheet music, and working at my company after hours, where I supplied the Xerox and the paper, we printed 300 copies of 182 liters, a plastic-bound songbook that still some of you may have. Gary was a man of many disciplines, and staying legal was one of those. So he would say, we can only accept a $3 donation for those books, we can't sell them. And we took those donations at the State Fair, Pioneer Ball, and other German-American activities. And later, at the request of the Denver Menicore, they bought 50 of those books, and they thought $3 was a bargain. Always the musician, Gary was part of the original Frozen band, the Schrummel Capella. Members, in addition to Gary, were Julius Poppe, Hans Dingler, Teddy Truck, Joe Fuchs, and Alphonse Myers. In the early 80s, the band, under Gary's direction, expanded into the Frozen Capella, and in 1987, 18 band members, including several over here, made the trip to North Germany with our spouses and friends. Jeff Nelson was our sound system coordinator at that time. And I remember one of the highlights was a parade riding with our band in a wagon through the Reeperbahn. And young ladies in the bell look, and he's entertaining us with a big smile and a look in their eyes. Come up and visit us. In the late 80s, Sue and I invited Gary and Hazel, along with Fred and Dagmar Stadelmeyer, to a weekend in our partnership-owned 42-foot cabin cruiser on Lake Texoma. Here we could reminisce of our youth and how we were going to handle our elder years. And it worked well as we watched the sun drift into the horizon, soft German music in the background, and the waves lapping against the bow. Then Gary and I would open another beer and plan another musical event. In the late 90s, our Frozen Capella expanded and became the Blast Orchestra that you're enjoying here today. All horns and drums, but Gary continued to work with us in a positive support, and they honored him as the honorary chairman. Gary's accomplishments have always centered on music. He was a singer in the Town North group, Men of Note, Big D Barbershop Harmony Society, and the Town North Choir honored him with the Man of the Year Award. So today, we honor that friend in the photo with a Kleine Witze and a Großen Lockout. We have learned from him. God bless you, Gary.
Okay, so we're at that place. This is the subject, humor. Dad believed that humor was the ultimate healing agent, that it could bring people uptone and make them positive. And it was his desire for all to be happy, to feel good. And he always said, if you're going to be a true humorist, no subject can be off base. And so today, in honor of that, some humor will be presented that may test that concept. For instance, you've heard a man by the name of Teddy Tripp be mentioned. Teddy's not with us anymore. Teddy was not a man of tall stature, but he did say that my beard reminded him of his grandfather. And my father used to say that he knew a little German and that his name was Teddy Tripp. But he meant no disrespect to Teddy, he loved him. Okay, so how many of you have ever called Gary Nelson at home and got his answering machine? Well, you may have heard this. That was Dad. These are things that can make you groan. See if you agree. Bending over to pick up something heavy. An early morning bowel movement. Gary Nelson's jokes. At Dad's 75th birthday celebration, I had the opportunity to joke with him about playing hide and seek with me back when I was 2, and that it took me 21 years to find him. We both laughed. Okay, at this time, I'd sure love to hear from the Frozen Capella. And if any of you know the words to these songs, please sing along.
Show free
Dad would be proud. He is. Okay, so how many Germans does it take to screw in a light bulb? Only one, because they're efficient and not very funny. Grown. Someone told me that I had to have balls to put on a memorial service like this. So, keep them up in the air like Dad did. We're going to liven up in here a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to tell you some things that you don't know about Gary Nelson. I don't think. Most people are unaware that Dad became involved with Dianetics and Scientology in 1950 and was a founding member of Scientology. He was friends with L. Ron Hubbard. When he met Hazel, something clicked. They were both into Dianetics and Scientology, and they made a pact that they would get married after they had done their work and worked on clearing the traumatic effects of their earlier life experiences. And they continued down that path, and it was expensive work. So they traded their labor as auditors, helping others to enable them to complete their goals. And they went to England to complete this endeavor, and Dad was able, of course, at that time to find out that his father wasn't alive. They also set up Scientology centers both in Kansas City and St. Louis, Missouri, and ran them. And so they were married in the Church of Scientology. Another thing unknown to most is that Dad was an ordained minister in the Church of Scientology. I think you're one behind. There's L. Ron Hubbard and Dad. One more. There you go. And so by the late 1800s, both Dad and Hazel had become disillusioned with the hierarchy of the organization, and they left quietly. And because the mention of Scientology had received negative reactions based on poorly understood facts, Dad and Hazel refrained from mentioning their previous relationship with the organization. However, they continued to use their training with much success and saw it in the manner that they used their intentions to get things accomplished. And it was admired by others. And few people probably knew that Dad wrote a book. The book is called Let's Change the Rules, about how to get things accomplished, utilizing the way that people think and the way that minds work. And he used this in his day-to-day dealings with the world. And some of you may have witnessed this in action. A friend of his in Mexico now owns the copyright to this book. When Dad and Hazel moved to West Virginia, there was no German singing group there. So that's when he joined the Barbershoppers. And he had continued being a barbershopper until his health would no longer allow it. So at this point, I'd like to invite Greg Elam to come up here. He's a barbershopper with Dad.
What a neat thing this is. We all know Gary in our own way. Everybody's here is here because of Gary. And it really demonstrates the different pieces and parts of his life and of his interests. Now, to be honest, when I sat down to build thoughts for today, I got out my computer and I got up the invitation, and I got that big grinning picture of Gary, smiling and so full of himself. If you think about that photo for just a minute, it tells its own story. Big, happy grin, yet an evident indication of some devilment lurking. And also, since you each know him so well, you probably saw in him the fact that he was about to simply tell one of those terrible jokes. Has there never been anyone who enjoyed so faithfully presenting such commentary? They were not all bad. They were not all good. But they individually were in a category some called awfully different. And our Gary had a bottomless reservoir of new stories of equal style. When Gary's wife died, he personally called me and asked me to speak at her funeral. I really did not know her except as Gary's mate and the opportunities when we would be together doing other things. But I said yes because it certainly did not seem right to say no on such a personal request. So that day I told everyone how much I admired her for enduring his joke-telling style. And I sort of implied that she was saint-like for letting Gary enjoy his unique storytelling style every day they were together. I could see Gary laughing and laughing as the presentation was given, and after it was over, he rushed up to ask for a copy, which I considered sort of a safe compliment that he hadn't been offended. He really did focus on us each one at a time. When Gary was visiting with you folks, he was visiting with you. And then he would move on, but he concentrated on what he was telling you and what you were sharing with him. We were barbershoppers and barbershop harmony chorus singers. Our music required total a cappella singing with full memorized words and voice parts, and an absolute requirement of fitting into the chord that made the music special. He fit in very well, and he also did so many other things just as well. He's the guy that also designed and brought the German shanty chorus or choir or whatever they call themselves to town, and turned it into a real treat for all of us as we hosted those visitors into our homes. That was just part of the way Gary did things, wasn't it? I must share one final story about our Gary. Valentine's Day is a big deal for barbershoppers. We sell the romance of having a quartet, each dressed in tuxedos, who walk in as a surprise and sing two love songs, present roses, and a greeting from her husband, friend, or suitor. One year, Gary was unable to rehearse to perform and was not going to sing in a quartet. Now, the really big challenge in doing that for a quartet was finding a place to park the darn car in downtown, uptown, overtown, or around town. So I asked Gary, who, as has been mentioned, was once a taxi driver, if he would drive our quartet, thereby making it much easier for the four singers. He happily said yes, and all was going well until his taxi experience began sneaking into his driving style. We were on a tight schedule, and would be rushing to the next appointment when taxi driver Gary would sense a roadblock ahead and suddenly swerve into a side street. No braking required. And his emergency driving style changed our attitude about rushing too quickly to the next performance. Again, Gary was delightfully different. No one else could have added such excitement to a routine task. So let me join the salute of our and your Gary. He was unique and special and made each of us feel special as well, as he touched our lives in a very positive way.
Well, Dad and I had a number of discussions, and he was very concerned about some things. And he shared that he found a time when he was young that he felt compelled to question all the so-called truth that he had been told, and to find out what truth was for himself and what is not. And he told me that he did not believe he knew all the truth. So he questioned why our food, our water, and our air seem to be poisoned by chemicals. And he was really concerned with water quality and that the fluoride and chlorine were in drinking water. And for 40 years, he only drank distilled or filtered water. He was also very concerned about aluminum and its accumulation in the neurons of your brain and that sort of thing, causing dementia and that sort of nature. So he used aluminum-free deodorant and stainless steel cookware exclusively. And he was also really concerned about air. And of course, that's why he started Energen and was promoting the negative ion generators. And he also questioned the prescribing of dangerous chemicals as medicine and the use of mercury in tooth fillings. And so he believed that there was a correlation between this and the incidence of cancer. And these things concerned him. He also questioned why anyone could find this as acceptable, or how this could possibly be perceived as normal. And he said that he did notice that more and more people have begun to question these things and to search for the truth in everything, which he applauded. Dad also questioned war, not the motives of soldiers and national patriotism. He knew the hearts of the men and women who served, but that of the true intent of those who profit from war, and the motivations behind it. And he also questioned why the 150-year-old technology of combustion engines was still in use today. Because he recalled the electric motors that were used in cars, buses, streetcars, and trains that were all replaced by petroleum. Now, of course, we have electric dart. And he also, finally, he mentioned that he was really concerned about the amount of fear that people had in their lives today. And he was concerned that it was continuously being placed there. So in his search for truth, especially in the 1950s, he found that there existed fantastic technologies that were capable of providing energy, sustenance, and health for mankind, and he could see no plausible reason why these are being withheld from people, except for them to just to have to work to make them that be their basic life necessities. But above all, he wished to see all men and women act sanely and to enjoy peace among themselves. Okay, do the barber shoppers, are you going to do anything for us, or you have enough here? Yeah, well, come on down.
And Rock that gun, I'll marry your daughter. Bum, 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 bum. Goodbye, my Coney Island baby. Farewell, my own true love. I'm gonna go away and leave you. Never see you any. I'm gonna sail upon that ferry boat, never to return again. So goodbye, fare thee well. Adios, amigos. Goodbye, my Coney Island. Goodbye, my Coney Island. Goodbye, my Coney Island babe.
With a special bottle for me. And I really enjoyed your trips. The other thing I have to share with you, I know most of you who really know Gary, And he was a member of Big D Chorus in his later years when he couldn't stand up on the risers, for 4 hours every Monday night. So he converted to Tuesday night, and we don't use risers. But during the rehearsal, directors are unpredictable. One time you sing a song and you'll do it this way, and the next time you sing that same song, that one little phrase will be this way. Well, in the middle of rehearsal one night, Gary says, "Jim, which way are you going to sing that song? Because last time you did it this way, and this time you did it that way." My only defense was, "Gary, watch the director."
Well, in closing this evening, I'd like to thank the Dallas Frozen Capella, the Frozen Singing Society, the Big D Barbershoppers, of course, for their performance, as well as all of you here for taking the time out to be here. I'd really like to invite as many people as would like to come by and get a bite. My wife got her food training with German food from Hazel, so I promise you it's good. And please come by and tell us your favorite story about Gary. We'd love to hear it. And maybe even there'll be some barbershoppers that'll break out in a little something for us. And I believe we have someone who's going to do a little something that wasn't on the program. Why don't you come on up here, Gary?
I thought this would be fitting for Gary, the last thing. I play a harmonica made in Germany, okay? It's a little bitty one. It's a little bitty one, and I'm going to play taps for Gary.
Well, as all of you probably know, in lieu of flowers, we're asking that you provide donations to either the Dallas Frozen Capella Charitable Trust or the Dallas Frozen Singing Society. And I'd like anybody at the next venue that takes pictures to share them, put them on Facebook, that sort of thing. And at this time, the Dallas Frozen Singing Society is going to complete our memorial service here with a benediction from Schubert, I believe. One more thing while they're on their way up here. Have any of you ever seen the movie Bucket List? This is Dad right here, and it's chock full of nuts, just so you know, this can over here.